Welcome, Drink with James, episode 130. I have a surprise. I shaved. It's not really that big of a surprise. I have been talking about shaving my mustache for a while, so I've been talking about shaving the mustache for a while. My father has a mustache. He's had it for 50 years now, maybe 55 years. And my feeling is with your look, no matter what it is, your hair, the way you dress, etc., if you don't change it every so often, you end up getting locked into that completely, and your brand becomes so associated with that you can't change it. So I wanted to shave the mustache because I'd had it for a year and a half. It felt like it was becoming part of my look. And while I think I look like a shaved mole or something, like a hairless mole, shaving this close has made me realize how little bone structure I have. I still think it's an important exercise to change your look. Make sure you don't get trapped in one thing that you're doing. But this is the first time I've had a clean shaven face in 5 years, and it is quite strange. And I'm like gonna put Rogaine on my face to grow it out a little faster because I'm feeling very vulnerable. So I appreciate your support during this time. But you can tell me in the comments, beard, mustache, clean shaven. What are your thoughts? Tim can throw up those of you who haven't seen, I don't know that many of you have probably seen the beard. I think earlier.
Yeah, we did like over a year of beard episodes.
Like a year of beard, a year of mustache. What's this year of? Is it the year of the hairless mole? Or is it mustache or beard? Let me know. I have no attachment either way. I just want to be as good looking as is humanly possible. And unlike some of you, I don't have the genetic gifts, so I need good suits, good hair, and the right facial hair to make it work. So let me know which one. Holidays are over, thank God. No offense to, this isn't about not wanting to spend time with the family or anything like that. I love my routine. I love coming to work. We close between Christmas and New Year's, and it just felt very, very long. So I was very happy to get back to work. Something I've been thinking about over the break. I'm sure y'all saw the stories that everyone was doing, the 70 to 150 slide Insta stories recapping every shit that they took in a year. It was just truly unbelievable how long some people's stories were. I was wondering if anyone hit a limit where Instagram was like, no more, you cannot post another story, you're completely done. How did this happen? Where did this come from? Tim and I were just talking. I feel like I didn't see this as much last year as this year. I thought the whole trend, I found it to be soul-crushingly boring. Even influencers who I love and whose content I love and I'm engaged with and look forward to seeing what they're doing every day, I swiped through those stories. The only ones I was interested in, funny enough, were the ones that I had a potential of being in. My little brother's girlfriend did a long one on her year, and I showed up a few times, so I was quite invested in that. I think for influencers, what I thought was interesting was that, one, it felt similar to unboxing, it felt braggy. It felt very much like, look at my year, look at me, I'm so fucking amazing. I did a post last week where I talked about how I felt like I was a bit of a failure in my with my cycling this year. I didn't ride nearly as much as I wanted to. I didn't race as much as I wanted to. And I made this joke about how it's the time of year where, influencers are writing these long posts about all the obstacles they overcame in the year and all the struggles and how they've, are so thankful for their audience. And I think those things are valuable, and I think you should be thanking your audience and talking. I think there's a natural inclination at the end of a year to want to try and put a bow on it and in some ways to revisit it. You know, it's especially if you had a great year, a big year of growth, I think it's natural to go back and want to revisit it. It comes off like, look at how awesome my year was, look how dope my life is. And the other thing that I found really annoying was like, it was literally Insta stories that influencers had already posted. It wasn't even new stuff. It wasn't, here's the 20 photos that I loved this year that I didn't post. Or here's, my top 10, I don't know. Even being like, here's my top 10 moments of the year. I think that is it's natural to want to do that, but I think that as, especially bigger influencers, as your life becomes less and less like everyone else's, it's like a 50-slide story about how much doper your life is than everyone else and all of your followers. And to me, it was pretty boring. It was a boring few days on Instagram when everyone was doing that. I think if you're gonna do that, a blog post is great. If your Instagram followers don't go to your blog much, I think it's a nice way to get them to see the photos bigger. I post a year in review wrap-up post of all my favorite photos. I do it on Exposure, this site that allows you to kind of post really big photos because, as a recovering photographer, I like people to be able to see the work really big, and I like to see it big. It's different on a tiny phone than when it is full screen. So I think blog posts certainly work, but like we talk about all the time, if you're gonna publish anything, think about how is this benefiting my audience? What value is this giving them? Am I entertaining them? Am I teaching them something? Am I showing them something new? And recycling 400 old fucking stories that you posted while you sit on the couch, sipping a Cabernet, thinking about how dope your year was, is to me, not interesting content. I will say I spoke to a few other people around me who aren't influencers who felt the same, that they were just like, oh my God, if I see another fucking recap from a year of every single thing that you did, I'm going to throw my phone out the window. So personally, I could skip them. I would love to see them not happen next year, if at all possible. That is my New Year's resolution, is to get you all to not post 70 slide year in review recaps next year. That is my goal. That is my mission. That's the hill I'm going to die on. Let's roll into the questions. Okay, question number 1 is, what can we expect in 2019 in influencer marketing? 1. There is increasingly backlash. I think that there will be more and more backlash as influencer marketing grows and as it becomes a bigger part of the kind of lexicon, like the popular pop culture lexicon, and as influencer becomes more of a thing. I think we're going to see more of a backlash. We're going to see more articles lashing out about influencers. We're going to see more think pieces about how influencers are ruining the world. That is one thing I think we're going to see, is just more negative sentiment. I think we're going to see more of it. It's going to grow. Marketing budgets are set months before January 1st. So there's already a pretty clear indication about how much influencer marketing is going to grow this year, and that growth is fairly significant. So barring a catastrophic economic collapse, which doesn't seem to be coming on, the markets are a little jittery right now, but it's because Trump is trying to burn the world down, and the markets don't like when that happens. But generally America's economy by most indicators is pretty strong right now. It doesn't seem like we are headed for a recession. I think we're probably headed for a little correction at some point where we'll dip down a bit because things are a little inflated right now, but that is neither here nor there. Let's move on. Influencer marketing will grow. That is number 2 thing that you can expect. Number 3, I think we've talked. So number 3, with that growth is going to come more competition. you know. It's just going to get harder and harder, not only to grow, but to get the jobs. If, you know, for easy numbers, if 5 years ago there was 100 influencers, and then 1,000, and then 10,000, and then 40,000, and 100,000, and I think that the growth in supply of influencers is greatly outpacing the growth in demand for sponsored posts and things like that. And so I think it is going to get harder and harder to win those deals. I think you're gonna have to fight more and more. I think that, you know, influencers should really focus on retention. Think of your retention numbers. Go back. This is a good thing to do in the beginning of the year. Go back, write down every single campaign you did last year, or every gifting campaign you had, every brand you worked with, every event you got invited to, whatever it might be. And, you know, think about retaining those clients. A good business, you know, at minimum has 60-70% retention. So if you think about that, 70% of the clients you worked with this year, you should work with next year. Sorry, 70% of the clients you worked with last year, you should work with this year. If it is looking like it's 20%, there's a pretty big problem either with, you know, your performance or, you know, the way you're following up with brands. Something is wrong. So try and track those retention numbers. If you have been doing this for a while and you're more established, try and look at 2017 versus 2018. See how many clients you retained from 2017 to 2018. It is much easier and more lucrative to keep an old client and keep them coming back than it is to find a new one. We talk a lot about lifetime value of the client. Think about that. Don't optimize for a single campaign or a single project. Try and keep clients for years. So retention, I think, as competition gets, you know, as the industry gets more and more competitive, I think that the smart influencers will focus on retention and maintaining the relationships that they already have. Other than that, I think there's going to be big changes in Instagram. I think there will be some kind of marketplace selling something. I think they absolutely have to bring commerce into the platform. It is, you know, it is starting to look like it's not going to outpace Facebook, but that, you know, it is going to become a bigger and bigger part of Instagram's advertising, or of Facebook's overall advertising. Facebook's, you know, revenue is 98% of it is from advertising, so it's you know, it's massively important for them. So I do think they need to link it to commerce in some way. So I think there will be more shopping involved in it in some way. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I think it's only natural. I think you'll just see more changes. You know, Kevin and Mike, who left, were the founders of Instagram, who left. They, for years, fought against the, you know, Zuckerberg and the other executives at Facebook to not change Instagram. Now that they're gone, I think we're going to see pretty big changes. Y'all saw the, you know, the new scrolling that was there for 30 seconds where everyone was freaking the fuck out, where you could no longer scroll with a thumb. It was all tapping. You know, I think there's a good chance they could screw the platform up a good amount this year. Because I think Mark Zuckerberg is amazing. I think he is like a once in a generation entrepreneur. I don't really like believe in the executive team there that much. I don't know like how much, you know. I think the business has gotten too big to have like, what do I want to say? Kevin and Mike, who started it, they were driven by their belief system and what Instagram was and what the community should be. And the business of Instagram is too big now to make decisions based on that. They're going to make all of their decisions on how can I make more money out of this. Especially as Facebook usage continues to fall, especially amongst young people. they are going to need to squeeze more and more and more out of Instagram. And I think, in the same way that Facebook, every year got less and less and less interesting, I think that Instagram will probably do the same thing. Last point, I think that opens up space for new platform. I am hoping really that a platform comes along this year that can start to challenge Instagram, and that can be interesting and kind of fill a gap that I think Instagram isn't filling now, because I think it's honestly too powerful, it's too ubiquitous, and it needs a challenger. And now that Snapchat's been beheaded essentially, I think there's room for someone else. So we'll see who that'll be. Does the language used in an Instagram story matter? I think the question here is do the captions matter? One, I essentially, I maybe listen to the audio of 1 to 5% of Insta stories. So if you're speaking to camera, there is almost no chance that I'm listening. Now, I caveat that by saying I love y'all, but when you go through your morning skincare routines and you're talking through how you're putting on moisturizer or what you're doing with your makeup, I'm not listening to that, because obviously it's not interesting to me. From a, I don't need to learn how to do a cat eye better. I'm already fucking great at it. But in general, I personally find myself never listening to the audio on Instagram. Do you?
Never.
Tim doesn't either. So does the language matter? Do the captions matter? Absolutely. I think that you need to be telling a story without audio, because I just have no faith that anyone is listening to the audio. A lot of times you're at work, you're in a meeting, you're in a cab, you're in the subway, you're in line for coffee. Maybe you have your headphones in, but you're probably listening to music and you don't want to hear someone talking or the beeping or the wind or this, So tell the story without using your voice, unless you're doing a walkthrough or a tutorial or something that is very much people are okay, I'm going to listen to this. That's different, obviously. But even still, I would think about, as you're talking, I would think about how you are using, captions to tell the story as well, because there's just absolutely fucking no way 100% of people are going to listen to it. So if you're just talking to camera, I have to assume 75% minimum of people aren't going to listen to it. So very important to use captions and use text creatively to tell a story, but also go back to what we were just talking about with the end of the year stories. Instagram stories, Insta stories have become an enormous part of Instagram, bigger in a lot of ways than the feed. And there's still not a lot of thought put behind these things. You need to spend the time to make sure that what you're doing is interesting. And look, there's slice of life stuff that is totally interesting and doesn't need to be, super editorial. And I follow a lot of influencers that are, very casual and just talking to camera. I'll give a few examples. Grace Atwood, Helena from Brooklyn Blonde, Sai, Scout and City, 3 influencers that almost never are uploading professional photos, almost never building stories ahead of time. They're very off the cuff, and I think they do a great job. That said, they also are usually showing something that I think their audience would find interesting. I think that Helena and Sai do a lot of their kids because people are very interested in their children, and so there's a lot of that content that's just not really thought out. It's just oh, here my kids are doing something cute, or here I'm trying to get a jacket on them and they're throwing a tantrum. So I think that that totally works for them. Grace Atwood as well, she does a little more that's maybe thought out beforehand. but I don't find myself like skipping the stories that often because it does feel a little more intentional and less like I'm bored, so I'm going to post a story. On the flip side, I've been talking a lot about my friend Aaron. He's been doing these stories that are very, what do I want to say? He's doing these stories that are essentially short films. So Tim will play it here, but he's shooting video, not posting it, and then going back in Final Cut Pro and creating these little kind of short films and then overlaying photos really quickly at the end. I think they're fantastic. I think they're great for people that have the kind of technical creative skills to do things like that. Again, that story, what Aaron is doing, would never make sense on Helena or Sai's accounts because that's just not who they are. But I'll go back to like a point, again, we talk about a lot, is that like I think Helena, Sai, and Grace Atwood all know who they are, and they're very comfortable with who they are, and they're really authentic, and they're not trying to be someone else. And so it just comes off as like interesting, and you're like, oh, this is this person, and so I'm interested in it. Christina does exactly what I'm saying from Trope Rouge, does exactly what I'm saying you shouldn't do. She's just like, I'm walking to the gym, I'm eating Cheetos, all those things. We've talked about it before, but like it works because it's her. You see young influencers sometimes, they're trying to emulate other people, and it just comes off as inauthentic, and it comes off as boring for me. And so I think the first step in all of this, and it's 2019, it's a new year, is really figuring out who you are. Write it down, write down what your beliefs are, write down what your values are, write down what you care about and what you don't, write down the things that you don't talk about or you do, write down the brands that you care about and the brands you wouldn't work with. Try and have some guiding principles in your life. I think, again, if we go back to question 1 about what's coming on in 2019, it's just going to get more competitive, and you have to carve out your own niche, and you have to be able to do something interesting. And it's so competitive now that there is definitely someone out there doing what you're doing better than you're doing it. And so you have to kind of be yourself and really kind of lean into that this year. I think that's going to be very important. Question number 3. When a post is doing 90% better than others, should you pay to promote it? First of all, I think this is a conspiracy. Every fucking time I post, I swear it's like, this post is doing 90% better. 90% better is a lot better, and I see it way too often. So that is one thing. Yeah, so if you have a business account, Instagram is trying to sell you advertising, obviously, and get you to pay to promote your posts. So when a post is doing well, it will say, hey, this post is doing 90% better than your usual post. Do you want to promote it? The idea being, people are already resonating with this. Do you want to pay to make sure more people see it? So the amount of people that are seeing an Instagram post are between 15 and 50%. Well, really between like 2 and 90%, but I would say the like solid kind of average is probably between 15 and 40%. So you can pay to maybe have 60% of your audience see it, or to have people who aren't part of your audience see it. Should influencers be paying to promote their feed? I don't think that that's super valuable. I don't think it's a sustainable way to grow an audience. I think that the chances of somebody looking at your post, clicking to your profile, and following you off of a promoted post that you've done are essentially 0. So I would not promote it unless there is a business reason to do so outside of gaining a following. If you have a message that you're really trying to get across, if obviously you're working with a brand and they want you to promote it, that's the time you would do that, obviously. Let's say you're launching a new clothing line or a collaboration with a jewelry brand, and you want as many people as humanly possible to see it, I would put some money behind that. So don't listen to Instagram and put money behind posts just because they're doing well. If you're going to pay to promote your posts, make sure there's a reason other than I want to gain followers, because I don't think that will work. So that is it. We don't have to tell everything. We don't have to have a 2.5 hour episode. I've been gone for a few weeks, so I maybe had a little more to say, but thank you. Let me know what to do with my face, and keep the questions coming. Cheers.